Good morning. Welcome back to Planet Doug Behind the Scenes for Monday, November 21st, 5:05 in the morning. Cup of coffee on the go as usual. I've got a few things on my mind this morning. I noticed a pattern in my life. How do I describe it? It might be two tendencies. The main one, I guess, is procrastination. There's things I need to do. I make plans deliberately to do those things, and then I don't do them. Time passes, and then circumstances become so urgent that I have to suddenly do all these things and change all my plans because I waited too long. That's one pattern of my life. And the other pattern is like an escalation of plans. I start with one idea, a small idea usually that seems reasonable based on the current circumstances of my life. I come up with this idea and I think, oh, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'll do that. And then it starts to spin out of control. Well, not spin out of control yet. I start adding things to that idea. That small idea gets bigger and bigger and bigger, usually for reasonable and logical reasons, and then I eventually reach a point where my small decision has turned into a huge decision. And that's kind of what's happening right now, and I'll explain. The thing is, I'm staring down the barrel of my visa expiring. I believe it expires on December 18th. So I have to start thinking in terms of leaving Malaysia or, going on a visa run. And that was the starting point for my small idea. I'm not finished with Malaysia at all. To be honest, I've barely even begun doing the things here that I had ideas about what I wanted to do. So I want to spend more time in Malaysia. So my original idea was, well, let's just do a visa run. And I started off with this idea of keeping my room here at the Kojoy for another month. I got a very good deal here at the Kojoy, and I thought if I could extend it for a month, that would be nice. And then if I have that straightened out, then I could do a quick visa run. And a very convenient place to go from here is Sumatra. There are very inexpensive flights to Medan. Your base fare, I've been looking all these details up online. The base fare for a flight to Medan is one way is 100 ringgit. So 200 ringgit round trip. By the time you add in all of your extras and the add-ons, all the little fees that they add to your base fare, even if it doubles, it could end up being 300 to 400 ringgit round trip flight to Medan. So I thought, okay, why don't I do that? I'll keep the room at the Kojoy for another month, and then I'll fly to Medan, spend a couple of days there in the city, just explore that city. I've been there before many times, and then return to Kuala Lumpur and hopefully get another 90-day visa when I come back into the country. And I thought, that's not a bad idea. Let's look into that. So I started looking into that, and then I started to get other ideas because I'm thinking, well, if I'm going to go to the expense and the trouble of flying to Medan, well, why spend only 2 or 3 days there? Like, spend a week there. You're spending the money on the flight. You might as well get some value out of the experience. Spend a week in Medan and then come back here. So that was my next idea. You see what I mean about how ideas start to get bigger and bigger? And I thought, okay, yeah, spend a week there. But then I was doing the math, and then if I fly to Medan on like December 17th or something like that, I spend a week, well, that's Christmas Day, right? After, a week later, you're getting into Christmas and the holidays, and those are the absolute worst times to be flying anywhere in the world. You do not want to be flying. Fares, airfares just skyrocket. Hotels fill up, airports fill up, there are delays, and every year I see the stories of people who tried to travel during the holiday period, particularly in North America, because that's when snowstorms hit. Airplanes get shut down. I mean, airports get shut down, flights get canceled, and I see all these thousands and thousands of people around the world. There's news stories every year, but all these poor people that are stranded in airports for hours, if not days, waiting to try and get a flight out again. And every time I pat myself on the back and say, okay, yeah, don't travel during the holidays, because I never do. I always make that a rule of mine. You do not try and book flights during like Chinese New Year or Christmas. Any big holidays like that, don't try to book flights. Those are the worst times to go. So I don't, and then I always congratulate myself afterwards, and I feel so much sympathy for all these people that have to, because they're working, and the only time they can go home to see their family is during the Christmas holidays, for example, and then they go, and then a storm hits and their flights get canceled and they're stuck in airports. I mean, it's just such a terrible experience. So I was thinking about my plans. Okay, I fly to Medan, now I stay for a week. Well, boy, now I'm in Christmas time, and nobody wants to travel during Christmas. And I was thinking, well, if I'm in Medan on Sumatra, I'm very close to Lake Toba, which is the big, beautiful tourist attraction. That's the most beautiful place on Sumatra, Lake Toba. And I thought, well, if I'm in Medan, and I'm just going to stay there for a couple of days, why don't I hop on a bus or a train or whatever transportation I can find and go up to Lake Toba for a couple of days? That would be a good place to go. I'm so close to there, why not just hop over? I've been there before, and then, spend some time at Lake Toba. So I thought, that's nice. So my idea is getting bigger and bigger. And then I realized, well, if I'm suddenly going to be spending 2 weeks or 3 weeks in Sumatra, going to Medan, going to Lake Toba, waiting for the holidays to end, before I come back here, then suddenly it doesn't make any sense at all to keep this room at the hotel. It's just going to be sitting empty. No point paying for a room that I'm not going to be using. So I thought, okay, well, if I'm going to book a flight to Medan, and I'm going to stay longer to avoid the holiday rush, and I'm going to go to Lake Toba, and I'm going to give up this room, well, I might as well stay for the full month. I'm going to get a visa on arrival at the airport. You have to buy your visa on arrival at the airport in Indonesia. Costs $35 US, at least it used to. I don't know what it costs now. And then you get 30 days. Well, I might as well use the full 30 days, right? So I thought, okay, let's do that now. Let's fly to Medan and stay for a month on Sumatra, and then come back to Kuala Lumpur. And that started to seem like a more reasonable thing to do. Yeah, so now I've gone from a visa run, a 2-day visa run to Medan, to a month in Sumatra. I'm like, But I'm thinking, well, if I'm in Sumatra and I'm in Lake Toba, I might as well spend the holidays at Lake Toba. Beautiful place. Spend Christmas there. That would be kind of nice. And then I was thinking, well, I've already got my visa on arrival, and for Indonesia, you can extend your visa on arrival one time. So if you get 30 days for your visa on arrival, then you can go to the immigration office and extend it for another 30 days. And you get 2 months in the country. And this isn't easy to do, by the way. I've done it in the past, and it's a pain because you end up waiting a long time. You can't do it in one day. The Philippines is great for this because they make it very easy. It's expensive sometimes in the Philippines. You go to immigration, and as long as you pay all the fees that they charge you, you can get your tourist visa extension same day. It might take you a day. You might spend the morning getting there, 2 or 3 hours hanging out, and then you're done in one day, and you get an extension of your tourist visa. And I think you get 60 days in the Philippines. You can get a 60-day visa and then extend it for another 60 days. So it's a great place to hang out, which is one of the reasons I've gone there so many times. Indonesia is a bit trickier. You get 30 days on arrival. You get one 30-day visa, tourist visa extension, but they hold on to your passport to do some kind of checks on you. So you go in, fill out all the forms, submit your application, and then you have to come back in, I forget all the details now, but you have to come back in 10 days or something to check on it, do something else, and then you have to come back. I think you have to make 3 trips to immigration in total, and it can take you 2 weeks. So it can take you 2 weeks to get your basically 4-week extension. So you end up stuck. You have to hang out near the immigration office. I mean, there are ways to get around this. You can hire an agent to do it for you, pay a fee, and then you have to go to the immigration office once, and then they take care of it after that. And then you just, they can even deliver your passport back to you. So then you're kind of free to travel. You're not trapped or anything. But of course, you're also stuck without a passport. So you have to be careful about that, because you generally have to show your passport when you check into hotels, and now suddenly you don't have a passport for 2 weeks. So it can get tricky in Indonesia. But I've done it in the past. These are not insurmountable hurdles. These are just the behind-the-scenes things you have to take care of. So now my 2-day visa run to Medan has turned into 2 months in Sumatra. And I was thinking, well, why don't I bring my bike with me this time? Like, if I'm going to spend 2 months in Sumatra, why don't I turn it into a bike tour? So now I'm suddenly thinking about, I wasn't thinking about it at the beginning, because for a visa run, I'm not going to bother. That's one of the reasons I was going to keep my room here at the Kojoy. It just makes everything really simple. I just leave everything here, leave my bike here, pop over to Medan, spend 2 nights there, pop back again, and I don't have anything to deal with. There's no troubles at all. But now that I'm going to go for 2 months and go on a bike tour, now I have to think about a lot more things, getting my bike ready, packing it for the flight. So I spent some time yesterday doing some research, and I was kind of surprised at how reasonable the cost was. Because if you're taking a bicycle on an airplane, you have to pay extra. It's heavy, of course, so you have to pay for extra luggage. But at the same time, Air Asia makes it quite easy. I know most airlines do. If you are traveling with sports equipment, you pay less than you would for regular checked luggage. So they know that things like surfboards and golf clubs and bicycles are quite heavy. And if you paid normal excess baggage fees based on the weight of your bicycle, it's way too expensive, that people generally wouldn't do it. So they have a category of sports equipment. And then as you're booking your flight, and you have to choose whether you're checking in a bag, you can pay for certain weights in advance. They also give you the option of selecting sports equipment. So I'm going to do it now just to confirm. I have a date set up here. Just at random, I chose December 16th as a departure date, flying to Medan, Sumatra. 109 ringgit. So you can't beat that price in terms of a flight anywhere. I think it's the most economical place you can go. So there's 109 ringgit, add-ons, baggage options. So a checked bag, which is what I generally check a bag. And if I'm bike touring, I'm also going to have a checked bag. It's going to be oversized and pretty heavy. A 20 kilogram bag costs 44 ringgit. A 25 kilogram bag, 56 ringgit. 30 kilogram bag is 96 ringgit. And a 40 kilogram bag is 132 ringgit. So in fact, if you have a bag that heavy, which I hope I don't, but I might, that costs more than your flight, which is, it's kind of interesting. But what I would end up having a bicycle and my trailer. So my trailer is my checked bag, And in the bike trailer, I'd have all my, camping equipment, bicycle tools, everything that I, bring with me will be inside the trailer. So that's my extra, that's my checked bag, and it's going to be pretty heavy. So let's just call it 30 kilograms just to be safe. So that's 96 ringgit. And there's a slider down at the bottom called sports equipment. So you turn on that slider, and now you get all the options for sports equipment. And that includes golf clubs, skis, snowboards, surfboards, cricket gear, bicycles, and scuba diving gear. Yeah, I forgot about that one. That's a big one. A lot of people go on scuba diving holidays, particularly to Indonesia and Philippines, places like that. And then scuba gear is very, very heavy, and you can check it in as sports gear. So for sports equipment, you have the same thing. You can have 20 kilograms, 25, 30, or 40. And I'll just choose 30 at random. That's 90 ringgit. So I have a total of 186 ringgit for baggage, just to bring my bike. That's done. So now my flight is about 300 ringgit for the flight, including bringing my bicycle. Then of course you can do things like pick a seat, pick your meal if you want to pay for a meal. I'd probably get a meal, why not? And Uncle Chin's chicken rice, 14 ringgit. Let's add that. And you can pick your seat as well. If I do that, I always like to have an aisle seat. And of course all the seats have different prices. They're color coded. They have standard seats and hot seats and different things like that. A hot seat is about 36 ringgit. A standard seat is 12. Let's pick a standard aisle seat, 12 ringgit. Add that to my flight. So I'm basically looking at 320 ringgit for one way. That's a one-way flight to Medan. And how much is that in US dollars? $70 US. So yeah, I mean that's not a bad deal. So I'd have to go both ways, of course. So double that, call it $150 US. You've got to get to the airport, taxis, things like that. That's probably another $50. So maybe $200 US for a round trip flight with my bicycle to go to Medan and back again. So that's where my thoughts are right now. That I'm thinking about doing that. And if I do that, if I plan to do that, it means I really have to get quite busy, because I'd have to get everything ready to go, get my bike. I mean, my bike is more or less in shape, but I'd have to get quite serious about this trip very quickly. I would have, like, what did I say? Today's the 21st. That's not bad. 10 days left, and then another 2 weeks in December. So yeah, 3 weeks. Yeah, even for me, I think I can handle that. I can get organized and prepared within 3 weeks. Yeah. So that's what happens to me all the time. My whole life I've done this. I'll start with a very small idea, and by the time I'm done massaging it, it ends up being quite a large idea. But at the same time, I've already been to Sumatra many times. I've even done a bike tour around the northern tip of Sumatra. But I wasn't shooting YouTube videos. That's another factor here. I'm also considering doing all this because I'd love to experiment with shooting videos on a bike tour. Can you even do such a thing? Yeah, so that's part of this whole project, the way I'm developing it in my head. And then, even though I've already been to Sumatra, and I've even gone cycling on Sumatra, I'm thinking I wouldn't mind doing it again, because now I would be recording video at the same time, and that would make it a new experience. And of course, Sumatra is a huge place. It's not like I saw and did everything there is to do there. There's new places. I've been looking at the map and kind of pinning all these places I wouldn't mind going. the more I think about this idea, the more I like it. I'm pretty excited about it. It would be a lot of work, a lot more work than I was anticipating for the next month or so. You know, I didn't really have it in the back of my head that in 3 weeks I'm going to be cycling through Sumatra. But I'm here, I'm close to Sumatra, I have a bike, I have everything I could possibly need for such a trip. And the flight cost is reasonable. You can get a visa on arrival that can be extended. I mean, there are a lot of difficulties to be overcome, a lot of challenges, but none of them are insurmountable. And I think there is a lot of enjoyment to be had with this plan of mine. The other side of it, of course, is packing is not easy. With a bicycle, you have to get a bicycle box, a very large one. But there is a bicycle shop very near here. Maybe this guy can help me get a box. I don't think he sells a lot of brand new bikes. If you go to a big bike shop, they tend to have like stacks of them because they sell bikes frequently and they come from the factory disassembled. They have to put the bikes together themselves and they come partially disassembled in a big cardboard box. So you can go to the bike shop and ask them, like, do you have any extra ones? For whatever reason, my bike is a big one. Like the frame, for some reason, seems bigger than most others, and a standard bike box it usually doesn't fit into. So I have to find an oversized bike box to begin with, and it's an adventure. It's like taking your bike apart, putting it into a box, and then once your bicycle is in a box, now it has to go to the airport, and that can be an adventure in and of itself. Yeah, so it's not always easy. The other option, which to be honest, is to go by boat, because that's how I went to Sumatra before. I've never flown there with my bike. When I went there on bike before, I went down to Klang. So I rode my bike from Kuala Lumpur down to Klang, and then there's a ferry that goes across to Sumatra, and then you can just basically roll your bike on board. You have to pay extra for it. And by the time you add in all the extra costs associated with going to the port and all that, and the cost of the ferry ticket, it doesn't really end up being that much cheaper than flying. But it is cheaper, but it is a lot easier in terms of packing, because the bicycle is a great thing to ride around on, but it's not that great as luggage. But right now, well, there's two issues with that. First one is I don't know whether the ferry is running. I believe it's called Jetstar, and you can go online, you can go on the internet and find all this information, people saying it is running or it isn't running, but who knows? No one really ever knows on the internet. I find the only thing you can do is just go there yourself. So I was thinking of hopping on the train even today and zooming down to Klang, going to the port and seeing if the Jetstar offices are open, and then just ask them, like, are the boats running? And can foreigners get on the boat? Because that's another issue. They're often meant for local people if you're trying to travel by boat, and they may not let foreigners on there because when you arrive in Sumatra, they may not have the immigration services that will process someone like me, like a tourist. Plus, the other issue is visa on arrival. You know, it seems crazy that it's this complicated, but this is the modern world, and as I said, this is all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes when you're watching a travel video from someone, like Itchy Boots, planning her, going on her amazing motorcycle ride through South and North America to Alaska. Probably, I don't know, it's like an iceberg, I think. When you watch her videos, you see the tip of the iceberg, the trip itself, all the beautiful scenery, riding her motorcycle, but maybe 90% of what goes into the trip like hers, you don't even see in her videos. It's all this stuff that I'm talking about. But the thing I was going to talk about originally, before I went off on that tangent, is that Indonesia does offer a visa on arrival, but they don't offer it at every border crossing. you have to make sure that at your border crossing, immigration issues visa on arrivals. And back in the old days when I was doing this, Tanjung Balai, where the ferry goes, they didn't. If you wanted to get a visa on arrival, you had to fly in to Medan. If you arrive by boat at Tanjung Balai, you can't get a visa on arrival. You have to arrive with a visa already in your passport. Otherwise, they just won't let you into the country. So what I would have to do is go to the consulate to get a visa before I went to Indonesia. And I couldn't even do that in Kuala Lumpur. And that's why I went to Penang so many times in the past, because back in those days, the Indonesian embassy in KL, they will not issue a tourist visa, or they would not back in those days. They just did not offer that service. If you wanted to get a tourist visa in advance for Indonesia, you had to go to the Indonesian consulate in Georgetown on Penang. So I made the trip up there a few times just to get that stamp in my passport, a visa in advance, and then I could hop on the ferry and go do an overland trip into Sumatra. And I remember running into trouble at the consulate in Indonesia a few times, because even though they offered the service of tourist visa, that's what one of the things they did there, they would often say no, because you don't need it. They kept pushing me towards a visa on arrival. You can get a visa on arrival. So the guard wouldn't even let me into the consulate. He says, no, you don't need one, just get a visa on arrival. And I'd have to try to explain to them that no, I'm traveling overland and on a ferry, and the ferry arrival at the port, the immigration there, they don't issue visas on arrival. You have to have a visa in advance, and this always turned into a big problem there as well. But anyway, I just hopped on the internet briefly just now to look at a couple of things, and I was trying to figure out whether Tanjung Balai offered a visa on arrival. But then I remembered that there's another way to get into Sumatra. I never did this before, and this might be the way to go this time, because there's a bigger ferry, I think, that goes from Malacca to Dumai on Sumatra, a city called Dumai. And I completely forgot about that option. I knew about it in the past, but because I had I liked the Tanjung Balai ferry trip. It was a very, very interesting trip, and that's the way I like to go. And I always dismissed the Dumai option because it was really far away. I wanted to go to northern Sumatra, and then Dumai is quite a bit further down the coast. So I would just basically be landing in Dumai, and then I got to ride my bike for hundreds of kilometers back to Medan. So I thought it'd be easier just to go, directly to the Medan area instead of going to Dumai. But I had this vague memory about visas on arrival maybe being available at other seaports. Anyway, I found this official Indonesian website that lists all the information for visas on arrival, like who is eligible. Most people are, like most countries in the world, you're eligible for visa on arrival. Some of them you aren't. So you have to check the list, and in this list, alphabetically, Canada is number 14. So according to the government there, I can still get a visa on arrival. And then it lists all the airports where you can get a visa on arrival. Yeah, Kuala Namu, North Sumatra, that's the name of the airport at Medan. So at that airport, you can get a visa on arrival. And it lists all the seaports as well, where you can get a visa on arrival. And oddly enough, number 11 is Tanjung Balai. But as I talked about before, that's a different Tanjung Balai. That's Tanjung Balai Karimun on the Rau Islands. And that's not where I want to go. My Tanjung Balai is Tanjung Balai Asahan, and it is not on the list. However, number 10, Dumai, it is on the list. So according to this, you can get a visa on arrival at the seaport in Dumai. So that is opening up a whole new world of opportunities for me. So that's something to think about. because I've never been to Dumai, and that whole area, that whole southern part of Sumatra, I've never been there. But maybe I can do a loop on my bicycle starting in Dumai and then follow the coast. Because I'd still like to go to the north. I want to go to Banda Aceh again. I thought that was quite an interesting town. I think it'd be interesting to shoot some video there. Can I do all of that in the time remaining? Basically now I would have to take care of everything here in Kuala Lumpur, get to Malacca, and then book a ferry ticket across to Indonesia from Malacca. And I don't know for sure you can even bring a bicycle on all these ferries, but I guess you wouldn't find that out until you get there. You just sort of have to go on faith, you know, that you can. Some of these things you have to just take a risk and go. But if my small Jetstar ferry from Klang, they let me bring my bicycle on that, I would think the more busy port in Malacca, they would also allow it. I think there must be some boat. I think there are a variety of ferry companies operating Malacca, Dumai. It's a much busier crossing, so I think I can do that. All right. Well, that gives me something to think about today. I'm going to do some investigating and see if I can get more information about the Dumai crossing. So that is behind the scenes for this morning. That's basically what I'm thinking about today. As I said, my little idea, little 2-day visa run to Medan has turned into a major project of bike touring around Sumatra for 2 months. Pretty exciting. Yeah, we'll see whether this comes together or not.